for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine.
Gerd Stepp was brought up on a grape and apple farm in the village of Bad Dürkheim. After working in wineries in Italy, Zimbabwe and South Africa, and a spell as a buyer for Marks & Spencer, he returned to his roots to set up his own wine business in the Rheinpfalz. Our fascinating chat covered his love of the African bush, Cabernet Franc, his talents as a long-distance runner, and why Riesling might just be too geeky for its own good. Hello, Gerd. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Tim. Great to be here. Great to speak to you tonight. Really looking forward.
You're in Bad Dürkheim, aren't you, in the Pfalz, but you've got a busy week coming up. You're off to Paris, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm off to Paris, actually, just a little stop over London tomorrow afternoon for a tasting, and then I'm taking the Eurostar on Monday night, tomorrow night, to Paris for Wine Paris.
Nice. And you live now in the family house where you were brought up in Bad Dürkheim, which is a lovely part of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. So Bad Dürkheim, Pfalz, the Middle Heart. I've been traveling a lot. I've been away a lot. We talk about it in a little while, but it's great to be back. I'm back since 2020, late 2020. So I was, before I was, of course, traveling and working a lot abroad.
How long have those vineyards been in your family? Your parents passed away, I think, now, but they've been in the family quite a while, haven't they?
So it's a long history, long. So since ever it feels. So one of my grandfathers was a founder of the local cooperative in Bad Dürkheim in 1900, so 125 years ago. So they have a little anniversary coming up this year. And so both my parents were, so my mom from Wachenheim, my father from Bad Dürkheim, both had vineyards, but it was also a little bit mixed, so a little bit of agriculture. They had some animals, and also my parents and together they had vineyards, nursery. We did some crafting. We did some sort of American rootstock crafted onto the European Steinwood. We had an apple orchard, but we never made wine. So we never had a part of a little bit of house wine. We have a little tank in the house, which is just 400-500 liters, from which we made a little bit of house wine. Everything else, all the grapes went to the cooperative. And so I only, at that stage, so I grew up with my parents, I was working alongside them. So at that stage, I just became a grape grower, learned all about that, know a lot about crafting vines and also apples. Was quite, we had a lot of apples. We sold it.
You could have been a cider maker, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So it took me much later to become a winemaker once I started traveling.
Are your early memories of vineyards then rather than wine, because you weren't making wine? No, parents weren't making wine, right?
No, because as children we were sort of parents would take you to the vineyards, to the fields, and we had a horse actually. We had the horse was called Fritz. So we had the horse called Fritz that was coming along. So I was always with the horse, and that was quite good. We had, because the vineyards are a little bit away, and when we're out with the horse, you take lunch and you stay the whole day. So we spent a lot of time in my youth, very early age, with my sister. She's a year older. So we just spent the whole day out in the fields, kind of wandering around, and of the age of 8-9, we were slowly helping a little bit here and there, and got more and more involved, of course.
Apples and grapes. But you studied viticulture and winemaking. Was that at Geisenheim?
Actually, I did a course in Neustadt, and then Bad Kreuznach to finish it off there. And that was before I then moved away and went abroad to work at some other places, like in New Zealand, where I went straight to work on a kiwi fruit farm. I tried to find something for viticulture, for winemaking, but it was in 86 and there wasn't that much around in 86. So I would have loved to harvest the vintage in New Zealand, but I actually kind of worked at a kiwi fruit orchard. It was a very big one, very export orientated, 160 hectares.
And no grapes?
No
No
grapes
grapes
at
at
all.
all.
I went up to Hawke's Bay, traveled around there a little bit, hitchhiked through Marlborough, and there were hardly any vineyards. I mean, there were just a few patches. I mean, Montana was there at the time, but there was nothing.
I think the first New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc was planted in Marlborough, I think 1983, wasn't it? I mean, it's quite recent.
It could be, exactly. And there was a lot of patches. There was a lot of, I mean, now when you know Blenheim and you drive around there, everything's like one carpet of vineyard, a few patches between, of course. Now, at that time, there was nothing. So there weren't many jobs going. I think I was in an exchange student program, and the wineries were not linked up to it. It was a kind of an international student exchange from many countries, including New Zealand, but wineries wasn't there.
It's interesting. So you've done kiwi fruit, and then finally got to grapes. But first, you were back in Germany. You got this job at the Research Institute in Neustadt, where you'd done your degree, presumably. And what were you doing? Because it sounds like a really wide-ranging job. You were in charge of research and development, weren't you?
Yeah. So I did some research. So the Institute of Neustadt, they do a lot of trials alongside all the sort of teaching and so on out in the field. So, and to evaluate a lot of the work they've been doing and things being trying out with fertilizer and canopy management and so on, they also wanted a sensory evaluation of these trials. So they had a microvinification going, and I was in charge of the microvinification, which was I think it was over 200 batches that we fermented separately and kind of bottled into the bottles, and then we were comparing the results of the sort of the studies, the technical, the theoretical, with actually the evaluation how good the wines are tasting. Say if you put less nitrogen in the soil, because then the yields go down. How does it affect the sensory? Maybe in many places it was better, others wasn't better. So that was something that I overlooked, and part of also the work I did at Neustadt, there was looking at soil biodiversity, a lot of thing. Nitrate was a big issue at the time, so leaching out nitrate into the groundwater, because the recommendation at the time for fertilizers, for nitrogen fertilizer, was very, very high, unacceptable high. We know now, but at the time it seemed to be correct. So we were studying how much of that nitrogen is actually taken up by the plants and how much is leaching out into the water. And so that was the other thing. So it was the making all the microvinification, and then looking also at this
and then the soil studies
and how to fix it, like with cover crops and so on.
Yeah, I mean, your next career move was rather unconventional, really, because you went to Zimbabwe, didn't you, to work for the Mukuyu? Is that how you pronounce it, Mukuyu?
Yeah, I think it's Mukuyu.
I think some people listening will be not even aware that Zimbabwe has a wine industry. But how did you get the job? Because you signed up for 3 years, didn't you? You'd never even been there. Had you seen pictures of it? It was crazy.
Well, because I was in New Zealand and I really liked being away from Germany and a little bit of international thing. Also, New Zealand helped me a lot to learn English and so on. And then this job was advertised. They had a winemaker from Geisenheim that was fulfilling his contract and was going to return to Germany. And I read about Mukuyu Winery, and I thought, in Zimbabwe, like you, how is this possible? This is a long time ago, so internet wasn't really the thing as it is today. But the winery was great. I mean, it was built by Stuart Blackwell, which you might know from St. Hallett.
Yeah, I remember Stuart Blackwell from St. Hallett, yeah.
Stuart was the first to build a winery. And then he left, he went back to Australia, to Adelaide, or further north, to Barossa actually, and started St. Helens. And so it was a beautiful place, high up, 1,600 to 1,800 meters high, so in the altitude kind of thing. We have had the summer rainfall, which is a bit a challenge, but generally beautiful landscape, growing some,
Colombard, is that the main grape in Zimbabwe?
At the time, it was Chenin Blanc, Colombard. Correct. Those two, and Pinotage for red. We had a little bit of Cabernet. Pinotage, yeah, of course. And something they call, Hermitage, Cinsault.
Yeah. I mean, you sort of fell in love with the African bush while you were there, didn't you? I mean, any scary experiences? Any lions or elephants or tigers you spotted out in the bush?
Yeah, a little bit. We traveled quite, or went to the bush with a friend of mine that I met through running in Harare, and he was an elephant researcher, elephant and giraffes he looked after, and a little bit of he did also some water study at Lake Kariba. So we spent a lot of weekends together going out bush, and he also put some collars on the elephants to track them where they were moving around and just looking at. Generally it was a fantastic time. We were hiking, canoeing the Zambezi down 5 days, going through the wild, just very quiet and lots of animals, crocodiles, hippos. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing to do.
And your next stop was Nigeria, and they don't make wine there, do they? What were you doing in Lagos?
In Lagos. I went there to help somebody build or install a bottling line. So the idea was, or the thing was, to bring some bulk wine from Italy, Spain, and some from Germany as well, to Lagos, to Apapa, to the part of Lagos, and to bottle it. They were collecting the empty bottles already in rotation from the bottle stores and restaurants. So we had a bottle washer installed, washed the bottles, then filled some like Spanish red wine. It was actually quite okay wine. It was good. We had a nice Italian machine that we installed, the bottling line. It was quite efficient.
What was it sold as? Not as Nigerian wine, was it?
No, it was no. It was written. Company was called Olive, and then they had just the name Spanish red wine and no varietal. But it was it was quite a nice setup and local, and helped a lot of people collecting bottles and so on. And it helped me a little bit to see another part of Africa, and it was a crazy time. I did well. Also, it was. At the time, Fela Kuti was quite famous, the musician, and I went to a few clubs in Lagos, which was cool.
It's an amazing music scene, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I mean, you were really into traveling those days. Your next stop on your world tour was Tuscany, and then South Africa. So you went back to Africa again. You were almost becoming a bit more conventional, weren't you, after Zimbabwe and Nigeria, or not?
Yeah, I think my CV was reading a bit funny with all the exactly Zimbabwe and Nigeria and so on. I thought that would be good to do something in Europe. Again, I found a really great place. A little fattoria, a little wine farm in Tuscany, in Mercatale, Fattoria Espoli. And so I started working there as a winemaker and a manager of the place from 94. And so it's quite a while. One of the neighbors was Antinori with his vineyard Pepoli, right
nice.
next to it. And and the famous Tignanello was just around the corner, the first Tignanello vineyard.
And South Africa, you worked at Villera, didn't you, with my good friends Jeff and Kathy Rea?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So then when I was in Tuscany, I thought, because in winter we had the pruning done, so by mid end of January I got the travel bug again, and I thought I'll do another harvest. I can do another vintage, and I love South Africa, and so I went back twice to do a harvest with Villera. First, the first was just to see it, and then I liked it so much, so I went back the following year to Kathy and Jeff and Simon to do another vintage with them.
And you were making Chenin Blanc, but bubbly as well? Were they doing bubbly by then? They've always made good bubbly, haven't they?
Absolutely. They were it was a big production, interesting, important for Villera, the bubbly. And when I arrived, the first year, I had to do a lot of the pressing, a whole bunch pressing of the bubbly. I think I was pressing 2 weeks, filling press, emptying, filling, emptying,
I mean, I like you because you never do things that are kind of conventional in a way. So you then went to work for Marks and Spencer supermarket. A quite interesting role because you were kind of a winemaker as well as a buyer, isn't it? I mean, how did M&S work? Because there were a few of you there at the same time. Great team with people like Sam Harrop and you and Jane Masters. I mean, it was a brilliant team, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that was so I was from Tuscany, where I spent Tuscany in Italy, working, also still driving around a bit as a driving, flying winemaker in Italy through the connection of Vilera in South Africa. I then came to Marks and Spencer, and that was a great team. We had the early 2000s, maybe Marks and Spencer. There was a lot of work to be done at the selection, and I think we did some good work finding new wines, new styles, and also with the team. Just the quality of work we did together was.
I mean, you transformed it, didn't you? And M&S won lots of awards for the first time. I mean, the M&S range always used to be a bit safe, and you guys made it really exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a lot of just criticism on maybe that M&S was a little bit too safe, and we had a look at going out of the comfort zone of M&S a little bit and finding new exciting wineries, new winemakers, and to beef up literally the range in terms of style and interest.
How much of a buyer's job is about negotiation, or negotiating, I should say?
So at M&S, the winemakers and technologists, they work alongside a buying team as well. So we do as the winemakers, we source, we help blend, we create the style of wine. But there's also a team of buyers that do the actual technical part of the buying in terms of volume, price, architecture, also in the range.
And that was you. Was it you guys chose the wines and somebody else negotiated the prices?
Yeah, we did it both together. So of course you can't exclude pricing from quality. I mean, there's a very link. We traveled together, but so we had a big influence on what was going, was selected for Marks and Spencer on the shelf, and also especially for once to the repetitive, repeating the vintages the following year and so on.
Yeah.
Then to work with winemakers, and I think everybody was really, really excited to see M&S and us winemakers coming, because we were very engaging. We loved the feed. We loved working with the wineries to do this work, to sort of exclusively unique to Marks and Spencer.
It was a good time. I mean, you spent 10 years there. Then you went back to Germany, where you are now. You were going back to your roots, really, weren't you? I mean, you've done this extensive apprenticeship, South Africa, you've been in Italy, you've been in Zimbabwe, you've been in Nigeria. You travelled a lot. You were going back to your roots. Family winery, were you going back to help your parents in a way?
Yes, so I was going back to the fantastic place of Pfalz. I was always deciding to come back. It just took a little bit longer, perhaps, because I so much enjoyed working for Marks and Spencer. It was such a great experience internationally, and in a way, I still continued a little bit freelance with M&S, and also working with all the exciting winemakers. But eventually, I came back to the Pfalz to take over my family vineyard a little bit, and to make this project with two other wineries where I source grapes and work with them intensively to create my step wines, the step range, and also I still have some wines in Marks and Spencer as well, and with naked wines as well.
Yeah, the Riesling you have, don't you? Yeah, and the Pinot. Yeah. Tell us about the Rheinpfalz. I mean, for people who've never been there, I've been there a few times. It's lovely. Just tell us, where is it? What are its major climatic influences, soil types, styles of wine? I mean, it's very different from the Mosel, for example, isn't it? You're a long way from the Mosel, and it does make very distinct styles of wine.
Exactly. Yeah. We far away from the Mosel in terms of 2 hours driving, but climate-wise, it's quite different because you're driving 2 hours nearly south, and you're in the Rhine Valley, so it's quite a wide valley. It's a little warmer here. We have a good warmer climate, but it's still very moderate. We have long sunshine hours. We have kind of nice hills and terraces, lots of different types of soil. We have limestone, which is great for many reasons for white wines and so on. With sandstone, loamy, loessy kind of soil, kind of rich. We don't have slate that much here, actually very little. Slate is mainly in Mosel, for instance. So, but times of climate, soil, the composition, the geography. So we just adjacent north of the Alsace region. So
it always reminds me of Alsace, in terms of the food, and the wines tend to be drier, don't they? Unlike the Mosel and some of the Rheingau styles.
Definitely much drier. All the wines I make, they're all dry. They're below 5 grams of sugar, generally. Because of the warmer climate, we get the grapes a little riper, also in the past. And so that leads towards that you're able to make a dry wine rather than maybe maintaining a little bit of residual sugar to balance.
And it's lots of Pinots, isn't it? Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, obviously with German names, Grauburgunder and Weissburgunder, and Pinot Noir, very good Pinot Noir.
Absolutely, yeah. Pinot Noir is doing really great here. It's been growing for a long, long time in Pfalz and in Germany for sure. But more recently, I think so much the winemaking has changed in terms of it's kind of a more modern style of Pinot Noir, not the classic German kind of older style that was a bit disjointed and maybe not so how to say international. And now it's much better. The vineyards are great. We also have some of the clones that weren't doing so good. They all uprooted for the people that make quality type Pinot. And so we got really lots of replanted vineyards that are now a few years old already and bearing some super fruit. Or we have old clones that are still very nice small berry clones, which is very good to work with.
And you work with your family vineyards that you inherited from your parents, but also with other people's vineyards as well, don't you?
Yes, exactly. So I look for vineyards I like. I walk around, drive around. So I usually work with people I like and vineyards I like. So if I like a vineyard or an area, I see if I can get some grapes.
You can get some grapes, yeah.
Yeah, and I also work quite closely with 2 estates, one in Hexham and Bag, where I have my tanks also and some of my barrels, and also one in Freinsheim.
And you've kept that interest that you had developed in Neustadt in soil health and biodiversity. That's been a big part of your focus, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the idea. So having done this way back, that we did cover crops and try with the cover crops to balance the nitrates, but it also helped to increase the organic sort of material, the organic percentage of organic matter in the soil. And with that, you have better water retention. The soils are cooler. It's kind of a different thing than a barren soil with just sand and stones. And so there's much more activity. And we see it in the quality of the fruit that we're picking, but also generally in the quality of the vines. The vineyard is looking so much more healthy through that. And it's good to see, all these insects and things crawling around and jumping around. It's nice. Yeah. It's a nice feeling. Also, it looks nicer when like spring is flowering. We get a lot of flowers in the vineyards and so on. And also because we have some terraces and there's forest a little bit leaping into some of the vineyards. It's quite colorful here.
No, it's a beautiful part of the world. But I mean, how is climate change affecting the Pfalz? I mean, can it now grow things that it couldn't get ripe in the past? I mean, I know you make a Cab Franc, don't you, of all things? I mean, not just Pinot Noir.
Yeah. So, that Cab Franc is definitely a testimony that things are getting warmer here, and we are getting it ripe all the time now. Good Pinot Noir as well. We get really fully ripe Pinot Noir with 13.5 alcohol without chaptalization. It's generally warmer. I mean, I remember a long time ago, like what I said with my parents when we were out, we always picked very late, mid-October into November. It was getting late in the season, cold, sometimes even snow. We had leaves fall off. Nowadays, we pick nearly 2 weeks earlier and still at a higher ripeness than we did a few years ago. So what has it meant is it's just right now we pick definitely 2 weeks earlier, if not 3 in average.
Than when? Than 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the difference. So 20 years ago, we would have always started in October, almost never in September, especially on Riesling. So maybe a Müller-Thurgau or something, earlier ripening grape. But the Riesling was always October. And now we start Riesling 22nd of September already to pick. And Pinot Noirs straight after. So they all kind of come together. Yeah. And usually by mid-October, we're pretty much through with the complete harvest, except of Cabernet Franc.
It's less stressful, probably, isn't it?
It's a little less stressful, yeah, because sometimes the later in the season, the more rain comes, and botrytis could creep in, and also once the leaves start falling, there's not that much more ripeness coming into the grapes.
You're not getting photosynthesis, basically. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your winemaking style. I mean, I love your wines. I just wondered how those years of being an international traveller, in a way, have influenced your style. I mean, is it almost as if you came back to Germany as a bit of an outsider? I mean, obviously you were born there and your parents had the farm, but did it mean that you look at Germany and the wines that were being made there in a slightly different way?
I think so, yeah, because the traveling has opened my mind a little bit, or opened my sort of understanding what people think of German wine, and maybe also where maybe something in the German wine industry wasn't going so super well in the past, like with a lot of the styles were just a little bit, they lacked a little bit of complexity, maybe a little bit of, they were too sweet, some of them. And so when I came back, I said, I want to make something that has texture, that has a kind of a complexity, a finesse, almost like an umami kind of quality. Yeah. And if I reach that through Surly and through the way I make the wine, I don't need so much sweetness, because I have enough balance in the wine without trying to balance something like acidity or something with sweetness. And so I think that was my idea, and I've seen that, and it does work really well when you leave the wine post fermentation on the gross lees or on the fine lees for a long time. You get such a nice texture into the wine, provided you have worked proper beforehand in terms of the grape, growing the grapes and vinifying to that stage. And then as often I leave them 8 months on the gross lees.
Okay. Yeah.
And that way we can have pHs still 3.1, 3.2 in Riesling, 3.1 maybe.
That's good.
7 to 8 total acidity, but the wines are completely balanced. They're not acidic at all. So that's the style. And I think because I only export, because I was away so much, so I only at the moment export to a lot of places, and there's a lot of appreciation for that style at the moment.
Yeah, you don't sell in Germany, right? You can't buy your wines at home.
You can buy them from here, from the estate. You can buy them in Hamburg. I've got a friend in Hamburg. He's got a wine shop, and we've been friends for a long time. He can buy them in Hamburg, but elsewhere, no, not at the moment. You can get them in London.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I mean, I buy your Riesling. I'm a huge fan of your Riesling. Just tell us, I mean, why is Riesling still difficult to sell and to explain in a way? You know, is it image? Is it marketing? Is it confusion on the part of the consumer, whether it's dry or sweet or medium sweet? What is it? Why is Riesling not as successful as it should be?
I think it's got such a lot of personality. So it's not like there's not one style of Riesling. There's so many different ones. It's a great grape variety because of that reason, because it does map really well the terroir, the place where it grows. It sort of expresses a lot if it's growing in the Mosel on slate, in the Pfalz on limestone or sandstone. But then you also have the complications. Some are dry, some are really early picked, like a Cabernet, light and refreshing. But then you also maybe got like a little type of little later harvested, higher alcohol, much riper fruit flavors, and quite a different spectrum of wine you certainly have. So
it's almost too complicated for a consumer.
It's almost too complicated. Yeah. It's great, it's fantastic, but it does take a little bit of tasting and getting the grape to know, and then also maybe your favorite style or your favorite winemaker or even your favorite vineyard or region or stone or something. And
that's why we love it. That's why we love it. But we're wine professionals, right? But I think explaining it to the consumer is harder, the general consumer. Yeah.
It almost tends to be a little bit too geeky then when people, I guess, get into that sort of crazy detail of. But as widely lovers and so on, we like that complexity. We like it.
We do. We're geeks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What about you? What styles of wine do you like drinking? I mean, do you collect wines? Do you have a cellar? I mean, what do you like drinking at home? Because you've got this vast international experience. You were a buyer for M&S, so you were tasting wines from everywhere. And how much of that has stayed with you? What do you drink at home?
Oh, the great thing about the wine industry is it's kind of like a thing that's completely and continuously moving on. I would have not predicted a few years ago that maybe white wines would pick up and lighter, more refined wines, almost the wines that I liked for a long time. Suddenly they come and the freshness is a thing. So I like wine like Argentina. I love up the higher altitudes of Argentina. Fresh kind of Malbecs from there, also again terroir driven like Altamira or something, or some nice Jacayas or something. Also South Africa, there's so many different things have happened in South Africa in terms of the wine quality and the style and the young winemakers. So there is a lot to enjoy at the moment. I've spent 7 years in Tuscany. I was last year in August, I was in Tuscany meeting some friends, and again, very, very different styles than a few years ago. And definitely, so I bought a few from a guy near Gaiole, from Sean O'Callaghan, and a beautiful wine. I work a little bit as a winemaker, wine consultant in Spain. So we've done some nice Garnacha, lighter styles of Garnacha wines that are really, really looking great from Credos, and also some Monastrell from the south, from Jumilla.
I had a fantastic Monastrell last night, actually, from Jumilla, from Bodegas Ferron. I don't know if you know that. I mean, they're brilliant. Los Gilsones, which is a fantastic wine. Do you think any of those Italian grapes would work in Germany? I mean, could Sangiovese ripen in the Pfalz, maybe?
I think Sangiovese could ripen by now, yes. I think if you take care of the yield, the canopy management, so it's not, because Sangiovese can, on the wrong soil, meaning too fertile, it can be quite a heavy bearer. So you would have to choose wisely with the rootstock and how you manage the canopy. But yes, of course, it could ripen, absolutely.
I want to ask you a bit more about the German wine scene. We've talked about the image of Riesling in particular, and the way you found it when you came back from outside. But how is it going to evolve over the next 20 years? You're inside it now. Will the classic regions remain the classic regions? Are we going to see new regions opening up? Is there potential in former GDR and in East Germany? How are we going to see it evolve?
I think there will be, first of all, there will be a lot of change through the generation. Now there's a lot of young winemakers coming now that have traveled much more extensively. A little bit kind of what I did very early, left home, where they go over abroad. They work 2-3 vintages in 2-3 different places like California, New Zealand, classic regions here around Europe and so on. So they're much more in tune with the international style of Riesling. They're looking for this. Now you can really see in a lot of the expressions of some of those wines, and I think also what I try to do is it's kind of a much more modern, more refreshing style. Let's try this. Let's over looking too much onto the Muscovich, which is the Öxler, the sugar content of the grape, which is usually caused by botrytis at some stage when it gets too high. And so I think we're trying to get cooler. Some places like where I work in Haxheim, we had 220 meters altitude, and that helps. So I think you will see a lot of vineyards. Or a lot of people will look for even cooler places now,
going higher,
warmer ones.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about East Germany, about the regions there. There could be potential because of generally it does get warmer and there is more potential there. I believe there's some good wines coming out of Poland at the moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the potential is there. I see the most change will happen to the regions like here, Baden, Pfalz, Rheinhessen, lots in Mosel. Mosel, you find dry wines now, dry Riesling, which was a few years ago was almost very few that did that. Now it's much more the move towards red wine. Things like, as I said, Cabernet Franc. I planted a Syrah as well. So
good, Syrah, great.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get nice fresh kind of spicy kind of Syrah here.
That sounds great.
Tasted some from some friends, and they and see the grapes how they grow. It seems quite a nice addition to the range.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think people forget that Germany has more Pinot Noir planted than New Zealand does. It's actually a pretty significant Pinot Noir producer already, isn't it?
It is. I believe it's the third largest in the world after France and California or USA.
No, I think it is, definitely, yeah. Do you mention your Argentina project quickly? Just how did you get involved with making wine in Mendoza? Just tell us quickly.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so with MLS, I went out, the first time was in 2001, so a long time ago. It was one of my first regions I looked after for Marks & Spencer in terms of sourcing, so I really fell in love with the place, having spent 7 years in Italy previously, and there's some sort of connection. There's something Italian in Argentina,
Something very Italian in Argentina.
Yeah, so it felt a bit like, hey, this is nice. This is like home. I mean, I felt really comfortable there with the people, and I love the vineyards. I really, really do. So I was up in Uco Valley, in Tupungato, working at the time with Catena and so on. And it's just a lovely region. And then I happened to do some project for somebody in Scandinavia. And then I thought I want to just take advantage of being out there and spending 3 weeks in Argentina to add also my little project. So I found some winemakers and we worked together with vineyards in Altamira, Chacayes, and Tupungato, and put together.
And that's under the Stepp label, is it? This Malbec?
It's so actually at that time, at the very beginning, I did a wine for Marks & Spencer called Craft 3 Malbec. And I also made another one for my for Stepp here.
Okay, oh, brilliant. I mean, you've made wine in lots of places, Argentina, you mentioned, Italy, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Germany, obviously. Which was your favourite of all the places you made wine?
I have to say, so I love Tuscany, I love Spain, New Zealand, Argentina.
I forgot Spain, yeah.
But if I had to choose one, it would be Cape Town. It would be South Africa for me. Yeah. I had such a great time there. I went backward, forward, always because of that. I did some great friends. It's great for running. I love running. I did the Two Oceans there, which is an ultra marathon, 56 kilometers. And I love the combination of it. There's a beautiful town, but the Table Mountain, the vineyards all around, the base, the water, the food. It's great for time. There's no time difference. It's the same time.
Yes, 2 hours, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I mean, I share your love of South Africa. And anywhere you haven't made wine, you'd like to make wine?
Oh, I did. One of the things I would love to make wine is in Santorini. I love Assyrtiko. Absolutely, one of my favorite grapes almost to drinking. Maybe Georgia or something. I would love to get to know a bit more about that. And I was once in Bolivia for Marks and Spencer. I think that would be also a nice challenge, Bolivia.
I'll see if I can get you to Georgia because I run a tasting competition there. Last question. Is how do you get away from wine? Are you still running marathons and ultra marathons? Sounds crazy. 56K. God, man, you've got to be a lunatic to do that.
Yeah, it was a bit crazy. I think once you get over 42 kilometers, you think this was now a marathon and there's still 14 coming. It's not that. You have to be a little bit crazy to do that. I do run, yeah. I still, this week, I think I did 3 sessions this week, 3. And I also do a little bit of yoga, Pilates or something. We have a little studio here. My partner, she does some courses. So we'll do that usually once or twice a week. And I do a bit of mountain biking. We have a nice forest here. It's the largest forest, the Pfälzerwald of Germany. And it's not too high, it's not too crazy hilly. And it's really beautiful to do some mountain biking in there and so on.
I mean, making the most of the Pfalz, but also making the most of Bad Dürkheim, which is where you were born and brought up and where you live today. So, Gerd Stepp, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about your incredible career. I mean, it's unique, isn't it? I mean, everybody's career is unique, but yours is particularly unusual that you've done the Zimbabwe bit and the Lagos bit and, a bit of Spain and a bit of Argentina, a bit of Tuscany, and then you've gone home, gone back to your roots. Gerd, it's been great talking to you, and I'll see you very soon. I hope I'll see you maybe in London tomorrow if you're around at the tasting. If not, I'll see you very soon.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. It was really great speaking to you. And thank you for taking your time and your comments. Thank you. Cheers.
Gerd must be the only person in the world who's made wine in such contrasting countries. What an interesting career he's had. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is the Australian Master Sommelier, Matt Wilkin. Join me then.
Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @timatkin and on Instagram @timatkinmw. See you next week.